Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bhagavad Shravan. Doing a little hosting today. Just a few points about participation in the program. I always share this prayer, and I'll continue to do so probably for the next 3 or 4 months, until you can recite it for yourself. It's a prayer of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, forget the past that sleeps, and never the future dream at all, which is what we're preoccupied with most of the time, lamenting about the past and dreaming about the future. So forget the past that sleeps, never the future dream at all, but live with times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call. So if you can turn off your phones or put them in airplane mode, so that it makes it a little bit easier for you to just focus on hearing the Bhagavatam without those distractions. Not only is it empowering to the speaker and the other participants, but also for your own self, it allows you to focus and become elevated in Krishna consciousness. Another thing I like to just mention, just based on my giving a class last week, that among the 6 loving exchanges amongst the devotees, that middle pair is considered practically the most essential one. Guhyam akyati prichati. So Guhyam akyati means a more experienced, this is how Prabhupada defines it, a more experienced devotee reveals his realizations about Krishna consciousness. And prichati, the less experienced, or the hearers, let's put it like that, they inquire as a sort of inspiring the speaker to reveal, give that revelation. So this is the easiest way to participate in the Bhagavatam discussion. If you read the Bhagavatam, it's just an exchange of, it is just a loving exchange taking place chapter after chapter, at least according to this definition. So you can share, we're encouraging persons to participate by inquiry and also by sharing reflections periodically, but of course we may have to cut you off if you're going a little bit too long. So don't mind if we have to do that, but definitely want to encourage that participation because that is what a loving exchange in Krishna consciousness actually looks like. And Prabhupada does write in that purport there that just by these 6 loving exchanges, one can develop his full Krishna consciousness up to the point of prema bhakti. So it's a very important exercise that we're performing here. I don't think I have any other outstanding announcements, so without further ado, we'll begin the Mangala Charna. We welcome Kaustubha Prabhu for the class. How are you all?
Hare Krishna. We'll chant all together both the Sanskrit as well as the translations. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yato Navad Itaritas Charteshva Bhignasvara Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyati Yatsurya Tejo Varidim Vidya Vimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Sri Krishna, O son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the 3 modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmacharanam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparer Ishvara Sadyo Hridyavarujyate Trakritibi Shru Shru Bhibistachanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Kopataror galitam palam shuka makadamrita dravas samyutam pita bhagavatam rasamalayam muhur aho rasikabu vibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice is already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shru Shru Shro Shradhanyasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nivevanat. O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtanaha ridyantastoya bhadrani vidhunoti suhritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of his devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nasta parayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavata yuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta eter anavidham stitam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee becomes established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattvam vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarva sangshayaha shiyante chasya chakarmani drista evatmani ishvare. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated, when one sees the self as master. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you all this morning. We have been studying since September. We took up the 6th canto. Welcome Venkata Prabhu and family. And particularly we've been looking at the pastime, the story, the telling, the teachings of Ajamil in this section of Bhagavatam, which talks about Poshna, or the protection that the Lord gives the devotee. And so last week we completed the first chapter of the 6th canto. Today we move on to the 2nd chapter. Today we'll be looking at the first 6 verses of this chapter. And then I think we can read through the verses quickly. I'm not sure if we'll look at Srila Prabhupada's purports to these verses right now. But then I think we'll look at some of the Srila Prabhupada's purports to verses that are related to these verses. So why don't we go ahead and read these verses now. We can go ahead and skip past the introduction and get to 621. And I will be calling on all of you to participate by volunteering to loudly and clearly and with joy in your heart read out these verses, and maybe we could pass around this microphone when we do for people that are watching online. Anyone like to take the first verse? We can just do the English.
Sukadev Goswami said, "My dear king, the servants of the Lord Vishnu are always very expert in logic and arguments. After hearing the statements of the Yamadutas, they replied as follows." Okay. And second one, Ladini.
The Vishnu Dutas said, "Alas, how painful it is that your religion is being introduced to an assembly where religion should be maintained. Indeed, those in charge of maintaining the religious principles are needlessly punishing a sinless, unpunishable person."
Thank you. Tamal Krishna.
A king or government official should be so well qualified that he acts as a father, maintainer, and protector of the citizens because of the affection and love. He should give the citizens good advice and instructions according to the standard scriptures and should be equal to everyone. Yamaraja does this. He is the supreme master of justice, and so do those that follow his footsteps. However, such persons become polluted and exhibit partial by punishing an innocent, blameless person. There will be the citizens go to take shelter for their maintenance and security.
Thank you. Is it Jai Shri Radha Madhava? Did I get that right? Jai Radha Madhava.
The mass of people should follow the example of a leader in society and imitate his behavior. They accept as evidence whatever the leader accepts.
Venkata Prabhu. You can read it both.
People in general are not very advanced in knowledge by which to discriminate between religion and irreligion. The innocent, unenlightened citizen is like an ignorant animal, sleeping in peace with its head on the lap of its master, faithfully believing in the master's protection. If a leader is actually kind-hearted and deserves to be the object of a living entity's faith, how can he punish or kill a foolish person who is fully surrendered in good faith and friendship?
Okay. So that's the section that we're looking at today. And I think there's a few interesting things happening here. We have a conversation going on between two groups. One group is the followers, or the dutas, right? So this word duta is there. So duta means, sometimes it's translated as like messenger, sometimes it's translated as like the servant of. So we can understand, like, it's a very interesting word actually, duta. We have here the Yamadutas, which are the servants or the messengers of Yamaraj. And they've been confronted by the Vishnu Dutas, or the messengers or the servants of Lord Vishnu. And I'm finding it just interesting how the Vishnu Dutas are speaking to the Yamadutas. Because both of them are going there as dutas. Both of them are going there as messengers or as representatives. So really, both groups have embraced an idea that my purpose in life is to represent that person that I serve. Both groups are very deeply invested in that. They very deeply identify with that. But the Vishnu Dutas are superior beings. It's an interesting the idea of a Yamaduta. Like, who gets born as a Yamaduta? I have a bunch of my old friends who I think would be really qualified. because it's the mood is to serve, but there's this tamasic kind of destructive kind of thrill and violence, I would suppose, is there to a degree that one can put someone in such a fearful, painful condition, and feel, I guess, some satisfaction that they're serving their master through doing this. It takes a special kind of psychology, I would imagine. And they're born in the description is they're very ugly. They get the form that's perfectly suitable to their mentality, to their psychology, and so they're like, there's something about their personality that's very admirable, and that they're surrendered to a very qualified person, and they're dedicated to carrying out the orders of that person. And then you have the Vishnu Dutas, who in many ways are very much the opposite, not into terms of their mood of service, but just the quality of their consciousness. It's far more developed, it's far more nuanced. So they understand justice, but they also understand compassion. And what's being illustrated here is that most deeply and profoundly they understand the mood of that who they represent. It will play out that Yamaraj will ultimately have to kind of correct the application of the Yamaduta's duty. The word duty likely comes from duta, I would imagine, you know. So they're carrying out their duty, but ultimately they'll be corrected, and they don't understand. They're very confused. Hold it, how? This man is totally sinful. Just look at his life. We have all the data right here. We've seen that he's committed this sin and that sin and this sin and that sin. And the right thing to do now is that this person be punished. It's actually the right thing for him. You know, even for him, it's beneficial for him. This is our job. This is what we do. And here's all the information. It's clear. It's very clear that he's committed all these violations, and now he must be punished for those. But it's seen that the Yamadutas have a deeper understanding, and they're speaking to the Vishnu Dutas have a clearer, deeper understanding, and they're speaking to the Yamadutas as if this should be obvious, right? Like, it's in a bit of a chastising kind of thing. Like, why are you doing something so wrong? You know, I can't understand why you'd be doing something. And when we look at it, I think we could look at this pastime and say, it's almost like there's a loophole here. It's almost like the Vishnu Dutas the Yamadutas are actually correct. But he just said this name? He wasn't even calling out to Lord Vishnu intentionally? And that just changes everything? Come on, that can't be right. That can't be right. And the Vishnu Dutas are coming, and they're not saying, "Look, we get what you're saying, but there's a loophole here, and you have to take that into consideration." Yes, I appreciate how you're dragging the soul out of this body right now, and I want to bring in the fact that the name of Narayan has been chanted by this soul, but thank you for understanding. So they're speaking to them as if this should be obvious. The holy name has been chanted by this person, and it's been chanted without offense. And that mere not mirror, but that solely that act, that vibration of that name, has purified this individual. And you don't get, and they're speaking as if you don't get that, you really don't understand what you're doing here. You really don't understand who you're dealing with. You're seeing this person as impure. You're completely incorrect about that. This person is pure. And that must be recognized, and you must release him immediately. Still, we look at it and say, but really? You know, a lifetime of terrible sin. And he wasn't even calling, like we're sitting here praying to Krishna with some faith. And he actually had really no faith in, it's a type of namabhas. It's a type of the shadow of the holy name. Where you have a mental concept, you're conceiving of something else, and you call out that name. When Ajamil chanted, he wasn't conceiving of Lord Narayan in his mind and calling out to him. He was conceiving of another person, another object. There was another object of his crying out that name. But still, and this is to me what's so essential about what's happening right here, is that the Vishnu Dutas understand their master. And in the case of the Yamadutas, it's the master of their master. But the Vishnu Dutas, they understand the mood of Lord Narayan or the mood of Lord Krishna. And they're representing that. They're there as representatives of that mood. And what is that mood? That mood is, it's incredibly, unusually, almost incalculably merciful. Right? That this is the nature of the Lord. That practically the Lord is made of mercy. So even though it appears that Ajamil should be rejected and punished, just this association that he's had through the name is enough for Lord Vishnu to say, none of that lifetime of sin means anything to me. I forgive and forget. It's totally insignificant. He's chanted this name. My messengers must go, and they must liberate him from this, from going to hell. That to me is very significant and important. And I think that, like, as practicing devotees, we're all coming from our different backgrounds. We all have different backgrounds. And I think for some degree, among us, people may struggle. And I see, especially when people are new to this, like there can be a point where this philosophy makes a lot of sense. But, and then there's that question of surrender, and a surrender to this person, Krishna. And I'm not always sure if I'm happy with this idea of surrendering. We feel good. Like, even I think there may be a devotee that we feel happy surrendering to, but are we really ready to surrender to Krishna? How do we conceive of Lord Krishna in our mind? Do we perceive him with fear? Or do we perceive him as the dearest friend, the most compassionate, the most merciful, the kindest living being that's there in our heart at every moment? And that is just ready to give us any break or any loophole or any chance to turn back to him. We just turn a little bit and he's ready. He's ready to send his messengers to save us. Even just the smallest amount. Even it may appear like, no, this balance does not work. We got a ton of sin over here. We got a ton of envy. We've got a ton of misunderstanding. We've got a ton of desire to be independent or to enjoy separately, and just a little bit, and he's going to tip that balance. That's his nature. Super kind. You know, generally we're not that kind. Generally we're not. We hold grudge. We're heavy to judge others, and Krishna is actually very much the opposite. He's very lenient. He's very much wants to give us every chance, and if he sees just a little bit of sincerity. And this idea, so I'm not sure, it's when we read more about Krishna and we go deeper, do we begin to understand who he is. Right? We have to, we need that sambandha jnana, that clear understanding of he's great, and we're insignificant. Oh, that might hurt a little bit. Am I ready to surrender to that person that's going to tell me that he's great and I'm insignificant? That might be a little bit hard for me to swallow. But we need to understand that, just as a parent needs to communicate to a child that you need to listen to me, right? For your own benefit now, you need to listen to me. So Krishna will communicate to us through the Shastra. He's all important. We're insignificant, but he's merciful. Do we get that? Do we pull that? And it's this kind of thing that the great devotees, that their mind becomes absorbed in wonder about. You know, they become absorbed in wonder how the fact that Krishna is so incredibly merciful. They can ponder this. They can look at the examples in Leela. They can meditate on the verses that describe Krishna's merciful nature, and they can experience wonder and ecstasy. Or the fact that Krishna is controlled by love. That fact that the all-powerful source of all power becomes overpowered by what the Jnani would see as sentiment. Ponder it, wonder about it, immerse oneself in thought about it. This is the kind of thing. We wonder about other things. Our mind tends to get absorbed in, my God, that's incredible. This is what the great devotees say, my God, that's incredible, right? The fact that Krishna voluntarily becomes vulnerable to the love of the devotee. The fact that Krishna takes the position of the servant to his devotee, or even becomes a servant of himself in the form of Sri Chaitanya, to relish the mood of his devotee. If you understand the glory of God, then these ideas become incredibly profound and a source of wonder. And we can see in our Shastra where that plays out. So I thought I would just bring up some things, particularly Chaitanya Charitamrita. When we go to Chaitanya Charitamrita, we get to enter into the minds and the thoughts of these kind of devotees. And so one thing that I wanted to bring up was the conversation. You know, it's said that Sri Chaitanya didn't write books. He wrote these 8 verses of the Shikshastika. But practically, his books are there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's his teachings to Sanatana Goswami. There's his teachings to Rupa Goswami, etc., which are just like perfect books of clear, not which, you know, Sanatana Goswami takes those teachings and he goes and writes Brihad Bhagavatamrita and Hari Bhakti Vilas, and Rupa Goswami takes those teachings and practically Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is sitting there inside the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we can see it play out, but it's played out in a beautiful settings. It's framed very beautifully. So you have Sanatana Goswami, this incredibly brilliant man, incredibly accomplished man. The government is depending on this man, and he has no interest, even though he's being offered all opulences. He's being offered fame, he's being offered money, he's being offered power. But he doesn't want it because he's absorbed in hearing about Krishna. And he's just desiring to get away. I just need to get away. I need to find some way to get out of this. I need to go. I need to see Lord Chaitanya burning in him. And he manages to escape. And he goes on this adventure where he ends up in jail and somehow he gets out. And then he goes and he's continuing on his path. And then he finds in Varanasi, in this very special holy place, he finds Sri Chaitanya and they meet up. Now his desires are being fulfilled to see the Lord after wanting it for so long. And there Sri Chaitanya instructs him. And there's sort of like 4 or 5 chapters or so, I think, yeah, in Chaitanya Charitamrita of the Sanatana Shiksha, of Sri Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatana Goswami. And within that becomes like the beauty of Krishna, the glory of Lord Krishna. And then he begins to speak about the mercy, how this Lord is so merciful. So I thought I'd read some verses from that. And so we're picking up here, let's see. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 96. And maybe I'll just read these and we can discuss them. So, oh, did I say started, what verse did I tell you? 96. I'm going to go ahead and start with 95. Scroll up to 95. So this is Sri Chaitanya speaking to Sanatana Goswami, and he's quoting different verses to support the points that he makes, which is really, when you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is what's happening. It's commonly a great soul is making a point, and then he's backing it up by quoting usually Bhagavatam or other scriptures. And so we see Sri Chaitanya doing that here. He says, Lord Krishna, and this is, again, I'm bringing this up because it's connected to this, the mood that the Vishnu Dutas, to them this was clear. Don't you understand how merciful the Lord is? Don't you understand the purity of the Lord's holy name? If someone even just chants that name, if it's done without offense, then it means that person's purified. And the Lord totally accepts that person. There's no way you can drag that person to hell. You don't understand how merciful the Lord is. So here we hear about how merciful the Lord is. Lord Krishna is very kind to his devotees. He is always very grateful and magnanimous, and he possesses all abilities. A learned man does not give up Krishna to worship anyone else. Why would you worship someone else when Krishna is so magnanimous, when he's so grateful? Any little service that one does, he appreciates it so much. So then he quotes this verse from Bhagavatam, My dear Lord, you are very affectionate to your devotees. You are also a truthful and grateful friend. Where is that learned man who would give you up and surrender to someone else? You fulfill all the desires of your devotees, so much so that sometimes you even give yourself to them. Still, you neither increase or decrease by such activity. So I wanted to take a look at this verse in the Bhagavatam. So let's switch to Bhagavatam 10:48-26, where it's translated a little bit differently. Would someone like to read this translation with great thought and appreciation?
What learned person would approach anyone but you for shelter? Oh, Radha Mulidar. When you are the affectionate, grateful, and truthful well-wisher of your devotees. To those who worship you in sincere friendship, you reward everything, even your own self. Yet you never increase or diminish.
Thank you. So let's look at some of these words. It says, ka, what? Pandita, what scholar? Right? And so I think we can understand it's like, what person that knows what they're doing, right? What person that's thinking clearly, that understands life and priorities and so on. What pandita, what learned person would approach anyone but you for shelter because you are bhakta priyat, right? Because you are very affectionate to your devotees. We can surrender to so many people. Sometimes it's not even appreciated by them. But with Krishna, even a little bit of service, he becomes so moved that you become very dear to him just because you do a little bit of service. He speaks of them as they're my devotees, my devotees. He identifies with them. So he's bhakta priya. He's very affectionate to the devotees. He's rita. He's always true. Rita griha. Or rita gira. His words are always true. He's not going to lie to you. He's not going to make a promise that he won't fulfill. He'll always carry out his words to the one that he loves. He's surda. He's the well-wishing friend. He's kritagyat. He's grateful. Right? He's, again, the smallest amount of service, Krishna, he not only accepts it, he's not, this is the kind of the point that I was kind of alluding to earlier, is that if we serve him, it's not like this master that has no loving affection for the one that's for the servant. Actually, when the servant serves him just a little bit, even in a small way, he becomes completely moved by it. Right? I believe there's this one story that Srila Prabhupada when he was staying at the Radha Damodar temple. And I forget which disciple of his was there with him. And every morning they would see a lady go to the Yamuna, fill up a bucket with water, and then she would bring it back to the Radha Damodar temple, and she would put it there for the pujaris to bathe the deities in every day. And Prabhupada said to the disciple, just for this one act, she'll go back to Godhead. Right? One act done, one little, simple little act done with devotion. Right? Krishna becomes so grateful for it. Right? It doesn't matter how many lifetimes of sin, how many lifetimes of illusion, how many lifetimes of really ourselves foolishly, in ignorance, acting as Krishna's competitor. Because he loves the devotees. None of it's important at all. He's grateful. So Krishna is all these beautiful things. I wanted to read Srila Prabhupada's commentary to this verse. He says, this verse describes both the Lord and his devotees as suhridha, well-wishers. The Lord is the well-wisher of his devotee, and the devotee lovingly desires all happiness for the Lord. Even in this world, any excess of love may sometimes produce unnecessary solicitude. Oh, this is actually not the purport that I was planning on reading. Anyway, it's a wonderful purport nonetheless. Solicitude. In other words, we give more care than's even needed in the circumstance. This is I believe, Hridayananda Maharaj's commentary. So he says, for example, we often observe that a mother's loving concern for her adult child is not always justified, but an actual danger to the child. A grown child may be wealthy, competent, and healthy, and yet the mother's loving concern continues. Similarly, the pure devotee always feels loving concern for Lord Krishna, as exemplified by Mother Yashoda. So Krishna doesn't need that type of care, but the devotee's feeling it and has to express it because it's there. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to the Chaitanya Charitamrita and continue there. So I'll read those verses again quickly. Lord Krishna is very kind to his devotees. He's always very grateful and magnanimous, and he possesses all abilities. A learned man, a pandita, does not give up Krishna to worship anyone else. Then the verse that we just read. And then he says, whenever an experienced person develops real knowledge of Krishna and his transcendental qualities, and this is important, let's focus on that. Right? Whenever an experienced person develops real knowledge of Krishna, not mistaken knowledge of Krishna, not some kind of filtered through our own hang-ups or our own conditioning, but real knowledge of who Krishna really is. Whenever an experienced person develops real knowledge of Krishna and his transcendental qualities, he naturally gives up all other engagements and renders service to the Lord. Can anyone think of a Bhagavad Gita verse that would relate to that? Whenever an experienced person develops real knowledge of Krishna, do we have the microphone? Vasudev Prabhu. Yes, that was the verse I was thinking of. Could you say it again?
The translation is that after many, many births, one who is in actual knowledge, Jnanavan, Mam Prapadyate, surrenders to me, knowing that I am knowing that I am everything.
Was that one of the first verses that you memorized?
It was among the
Vasudeva Sarvamiti. It's a beautiful verse, and we see it play out here. I've seen also Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So in Garuda Prabhu's translation of the Gita, did you know how he translates that? A little different, but he says like Vasudeva is my everything, like that. Vasudeva is my everything. So here that plays out as described here. And then he says there are two kinds of devotees. Whenever an experienced person develops real knowledge of Krishna and his transcendental qualities, he naturally gives up all other engagements and renders service to the Lord. Uddhava gives evidence of this. So what qualities are we talking about, particularly here? What quality in particular? Yeah, with that merciful is what's being highlighted here. And then to give evidence of this, Sri Chaitanya says, Uddhava speaks about this. Yeah, and then this is a famous verse. So would you like to quote the verse? You know this one? Aho Bhakiyam, yeah. Microphone.
Aho Bhakiyam Stanaka Lokutam Jigang Sayapya Sadui Lebe Katim Da Truticham Totonyam Kamba Dayalum Sharanam Brajema. What happened in translation?
Oh, you don't have it there?
No, he just accidentally.
Oh, I can do it if it's going to be shown there. Got it?
23. Alas. Alas. How shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast.
Okay, now think about this. And when I said that the great devotees, this is where their minds go, this is what they contemplate, this is what they experience wonder about. Great devotees have experienced great wonder about this verse. That when you think about it, that Putana was a Rakshashi. It means her life was about eating people. That was her main focus in life. And she was like a mystic, so that she was very powerful. She could actually transform her body into like any kind of other form. Like very dangerous character. And she was in the service of Kamsa, the evil king. So he recruited her to kill Krishna. She accepted that mission. She transformed her body into such a beautiful woman. It was like she was so beautiful, graceful, charming, that when she entered into Vrindavan and came to the home of Krishna, everyone was stunned by her beauty. And she just seemed so beautiful that she was like trustworthy. You know, it's like this beautiful, angelic woman. Yes, please see. Where normally someone's kind of very protective of their child, let's speak of their infant child. And they're going to be very careful whose arms they put that child in. When they saw Putana come disguised that way, they go right ahead. And so she adopted, you know, with great deviousness, with a mission to kill Krishna. She fooled everyone like this, and then she had put this poison on her breast, this very deadly poison. It's actually a very sick thing when you think about it, right? Like if we were to hear about someone, dude, this is a sick-minded, evil person. What sin is worse than this? This is really bad. I'm going to kill an infant, beautiful, beautiful little baby, and I'm going to kill it with poison, disguised as like a very caring, beautiful, motherly woman. And then she attempted to kill Krishna that way, and we all know the story, that Krishna just sucked all the life out of her. But then Krishna gave her the benediction. A benediction that's like, that great yogis don't get. Great people who renounce everything and they go off into the forest and they perform great austerities and they give up all sense gratification, and they're very patient and determined and incredibly renounced with their mind fixed on achieving the higher goal. They don't even come close to what the benediction that she got. Simply because she acted as the Krishna, he didn't see any of the negative, although there was so much negative to see. He focused entirely on the positive. Well, she came to me like a mother. I'll grant her the position of like a maidservant in the spiritual world. So when the devotees think about this, they say, why would I serve anyone else? Why would I serve anyone but Krishna? Just look at his quality of mercy. I mean, this evil woman comes to him with the very worst intention. He doesn't even take note of that. and he only sees good. And then he grants such a tremendous benediction for it. Why would I want to serve anyone else? So of course, this verse plays out in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, where there's a beautiful pastime, very, very interesting pastime when you think about it, but it's a pastime that helps us, in this context, it's helping us understand the mercy of Krishna, but it also kind of illustrates how we need to be very careful about how we judge devotees. So it was the pastime, it was when Gadadhar Pandit was brought to meet Pundarik Vidyanidhi by Mukunda. So this Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he had a reputation. He wasn't, I don't know if he was originally from the Navadvip area, but he wasn't as well known there as some other devotees. So Gadadhar Pandit, who grew up in Navadvip, didn't know him. But Mukunda knew him, and Mukunda was like, oh, you need to meet this devotee. You know? Yes?
He was living in elsewhere. And
Pundarik Vidyanidhi.
yeah, and he was very respected.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. I don't know the exact reference, but people would actually bow down in front of his home.
Yeah.
He was a very respected Brahmin, and he had so enough of it. He said, I'm going to move elsewhere, and I'm going to go entirely undercover.
I see. Okay. So he's living undercover, deep undercover. And so Mukunda's like, I want Gadadhar Pandit to meet this devotee, which is such a benefit. This is one of the great services that devotees do for one another. I need to introduce you to this devotee. Right? So when Gadadhar Pandit sees him, he sees a man that looks very much like a Vishayi, like a sense enjoyer, right? Like in every way, not even beyond like normal, common, sense gratifier. Yeah, extra. I'm not familiar with that. Okay, he's an extra, or no? He's living. Yeah. Yeah.
Suppose someone comes in like a ball gown. So we would say that's extra.
Okay. So this is like double or triple extra. Triple X. He's got perfumed hair that's oiled and everything. And he's lying on a bed that's like, it's super opulent, and there's pearls and jewelry, and he's got like I think he even had like a hookah there, and like it's just like over the top. Undercover is a devotee. You look at that person and say, oh, that's a great devotee. So it's like undercover like that. So Gadadhar Pandit, he sees this. He's never seen a devotee like this. I mean, he can't quite make sense of it. So in his mind, there was some level of judgment or criticism. And Mukunda's devotees are very real. They're very sensitive. So he could sense. Gadadhar Pandit, he didn't do this or smirk or say anything, but Mukunda's a sensitive Vaishnava. He picked up on it. This in his mind, he doesn't understand. And Mukunda was a great kirtan leader, a great singer. So he just sang this verse out loud. We could imagine it was probably very beautiful how he sang it. A whole Bhakiyam, what is it? Satakalakutam. Oh, how merciful is Lord Krishna, that although Putana had poisoned her breast, I think it says there that she's asadvi, right? She's not like there's sadhu and there's sadvi, and she's asadvi. She's not like it was just wrong. It was just bad behavior, unchaste in every way. But he's so merciful that that he granted her such a benediction. So he sang that verse. When Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard that verse, his reaction to it wasn't like a what do we call it? It was an involuntary reaction. That it reminded him of this merciful quality of Krishna, and when he thought about it, it's just too much. How great Krishna is, how kind he is, how merciful. Who in the world is so merciful? That it struck him so deep and so strong that he began to cry. But not just like crying like normally, but like water just like wetting his clothes crying. His clothes were soaked with the tears. And he was rolling on the floor, and his limbs were like flying around, and his servants were coming. They're trying to hold him down, and he still couldn't control himself. And all the furniture was getting knocked over, and everything was flying all over the place. And they're trying, and then finally he gradually came out of it.
6 hours later.
6 hours later, okay. And he was embarrassed, you know. But Gadadhar Pandit, now he understood. Right? All he had to do was chant that verse. Boom. What was underneath came out externally. That deep understanding and appreciation of who Krishna is. Right? And then, so that's, if we're not getting that, we may not get it as deeply and profoundly and be as deeply affected as Pundarik Vijayanidhi. But if within us there's any hesitation to surrender to Krishna, if there's any holding back because we think, is this really the ultimate reality, that I bow down to this all-powerful being like a servant to a master? Equality seems to be like such a more palatable kind of conception. And that's the psychology behind impersonalism. You know, that there's nobody greater than me, that I am God. And I just merge into that oneness and experience the bliss of just being. Right? But the reality is that Krishna is all powerful, and we are dependent entirely. But he's so merciful that he even becomes controlled by us through our love. Something worth pondering, something worth thinking, and there should be no hesitation. Psychologically, there should be no hesitation. We should read these and become deeper day by day. That message should become reinforced through hearing and seeing it playing out in the lives of the devotees, that we want to surrender, that we want to take shelter, and that we don't want to take shelter anywhere else. Because who would take shelter? What learned person, what pundit, what person that understands things as they are would take shelter of any other master except for Krishna, because he's so merciful. Right? So that it plays out. I thought I could read a couple more purports. Let's go ahead and go to the third canto in which this verse appears. And here we have another very interesting conversation, right? We go from Sri Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami, and now we go to who Sri Chaitanya was quoting, which is Uddhava speaking to Vidura. What two wonderful devotees. I mean, we can read Mahabharata, we can read Bhagavatam, and we can fall in love with these devotees. Vidura is so noble, so wise, so brilliant, so kind, so brave. What a beautiful character he is in Mahabharata. And now he's wandering, he's left. I believe this was in the period where he left, perhaps not. Well, this is after Krishna has left. And so he meets up with Uddhava. And he knows who Uddhava is. Because for someone like Vidura, they're Krishna's people, but they're in Hastinapur. So it's kind of like once removed. Whereas Uddhava, he's like Dwarkavasi. He's like, that's Krishna's kingdom. And he's like Krishna's best friend there. He even, just to look at him, it looks like Krishna. He's wearing Krishna's clothes from his youth. As when he was just a little boy, Uddhava was completely absorbed in thought and devotion and love for Krishna. So he knows how dear this person is to Krishna and how much realization and understanding of Krishna that he has. So Vidura is inquiring him, tell me about Krishna. And so we hear some of these verses. Jai Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar. And what verse did I tell you to start from? You remember? Well, it ends at 23. I think 16. So in this, what happens is Krishna has left now. And when Vidura asks this question, it naturally stirs up emotions, devotional emotions, vipralamba, feelings of separation that Uddhava feels very profoundly, and even so much so that he can't even speak at first. He's just kind of silent. And then he kind of manages to pull himself together. He wipes away his tears. And then he begins to speak. When I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva. Although he is unborn, how he went away from his father's protection to Vraja and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear. All these bewildering incidents give me distress. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents. Let's go ahead and look at the purport to 16 first. Would someone like to read this purport? Let's get you the microphone. Thank you.
Because Lord Krishna is the original person from whom everything and everyone has emanated, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, Bhagavad Gita 10.8, and then Jadmadhyasa Yataha, Vedanta Sutra 112. Nothing can be equal to or greater than him. The Lord is supremely perfect, and whenever he enacts his transcendental pastimes as a son, a rival, or an object of enmity, he plays the part so perfectly that even pure devotees like Uddhava are bewildered. For example, Uddhava knew perfectly well that Lord Sri Krishna is eternally existent and can neither die nor disappear for good, yet he lamented for Lord Krishna. All these events are perfect arrangements to give perfection to his supreme glories. It is for enjoyment's sake. When a father plays with his little son and the father lies down on the floor as if defeated by the son, it is just to give the little son pleasure and nothing more.
Could we hold there just for a second? So in a sense, what's being said here by Prabhupada through this purport is when Uddhava thinks about Krishna was the rival of, say, Kamsa in a sense, or he was the child of Vasudeva and Devaki and took birth from them in the jail cell. And as a devotee who has such a love for Krishna, hearing about this is almost like pain. Just like, as imagine if like a father was playing with his child and he's down there on knee, and then the child pretends that he kills the father and the father falls dead. And if the child, just by seeing that, started to cry like, oh, my father's dead. You know, just even thinking about my father dying. So Uddhava's like that. He's a devotee of Krishna. He knows who Krishna is. But just thinking about this stirs these emotions in him. You know, that are simultaneously painful and incredibly sweet. Yeah.
Because the Lord is all-powerful, it is possible for him to adjust opposites, such as birth and no birth, power and defeat, fear and fearlessness. A pure devotee knows very well how it is possible for the Lord to adjust opposite things. But he laments for the non-devotees who, not knowing the supreme glories of the Lord, think of him as imaginary simply because there are so many apparently contradictory statements in the scriptures.
Now, as Srila Prabhupada often does, the final sentence of the purport, very powerful.
Factually, there is nothing contradictory. Everything is possible when we understand the Lord as the Lord and not as one of us, with all our imperfection.
Right? It's only because the imperfection in our own vision do we misconceive of who Krishna is and hesitate to fully surrender to him. It's the onus is on us. Right? It's not that Krishna should be a little different so that it would be easier for us. But he's super merciful. You know. Okay, thank you for that, Tobiranga Prabhu. And then the next verse, 17. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents for their, Krishna and Balaram's, inability to serve their feet due to being away from home because of great fear of Kamsa. He said, "O mother, O father, please excuse us for this inability. All this behavior of the Lord gives me pain at heart." And let's take a look at this commentary as well. Someone would like to read this? May I read the first paragraph? Oh, we got. Why don't you take the second paragraph? Yashoda's got the mic right now, and you could take the second one.
It appears that Lord Krishna and Baladev were both very greatly afraid of Kamsa, and therefore they had to hide themselves. But if Lord Krishna and Baladev are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how was it possible that they were afraid of Kamsa? Is there any contradiction in such statements? Vasudev, due to his great appreciation for Krishna, wanted to give him protection. He never thought that Krishna was the Supreme Lord and could protect himself. He thought of Krishna as his son. Because Vasudev was a great devotee of the Lord, he did not like to think that Krishna might be killed like his other children. Morally, Vasudev was bound to deliver Krishna to the hands of Kamsa because he had promised to turn over all his children. But out of his great love for Krishna, he broke his promise, and the Lord was very pleased with Vasudev for his transcendental mentality.
That's a very interesting sentence right there, right? Mm-hmm. That even, in a sense, it's always the sentiment that overrules the rule. So although Vasudev broke his promise, because he did it out of love for Krishna, Krishna deeply appreciated that. And then this is very interesting too. Please continue.
He did not want to disturb the intense affection of Vasudev, and thus he agreed to be carried by his father to the house of Nanda and Yashoda. And just to test the intense love of Vasudev, Lord Krishna fell down in the waters of the Yamuna while his father was crossing the river. Vasudev became mad after his child as he tried to recover him in the midst of the rising river.
So everything that Krishna is doing is just to stir and increase the exchange of love. So he appreciated that Vasudev lied. Why? Because it was out of love. Then he purposely falls into the water just to see the love of Vasudev in desperately trying to find him in that water. And Gail, would you like to read the second paragraph?
These are all glorified pastimes of the Lord, and there is no contradiction in such manifestations. Since Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he was never afraid of Kamsa, but to please his father, he agreed to be so. And the most brilliant part of his supreme character was that he begged pardon from his parents for being unable to serve their feet while absent from home because of fear of Kamsa. The Lord, whose lotus feet are worshipped by demigods like Brahma and Shiva, wanted to worship the feet of Vasudev. Such instruction by the Lord to the world is quite appropriate. Even if one is the Supreme Lord, one must serve his parents. A son is indebted to his parents in so many ways, and it is the duty of the son to serve his parents, however great the son may be. Indirectly, Krishna wanted to teach the atheists who do not accept the supreme fatherhood of God, and they may learn from this action how much the Supreme Father has to be respected. Uddhava was simply struck with wonder by such glorious behavior of the Lord, and he was very sorry that he was unable to go with him.
Thank you. So Uddhava here is struck. He's struck that here's Krishna, that he becomes the child. He goes before his parents. I'm so sorry that I failed you the way that I failed you. Please forgive me for this. Right? It's for the devotee, it will strike them with wonder. Here's the all-powerful, all-pervasive, omnipotent, all-knowing being that's supporting everyone. Who does he have to apologize to? But the nature of his heart is such that he enjoys taking that subservient position to his devotee. And he goes before his parents, I'm so sorry, I failed you so badly. Like that. So Uddhava is hearing this, he's just remembering this and just becoming all choked up about it. His love is so, he understands who Krishna is. As was stated at the end of that last purport, if we don't conceive of Krishna like this, there's some insufficiency in our understanding. Like, I believe it was Gandhi who once said something to the extent that, like, well, if that was actually a real battle on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, then he either said, like, that Bhagavad Gita I'm not interested in, or that Krishna I'm not interested in. Have you heard a statement like that, right? In other words, it must be all metaphor, And then I fully accept the message. But if you're saying that this really happened, then that Krishna I'm not interested in. Because you don't understand what was happening on that battlefield. That every one of those souls, each in their own individual way, was being granted a tremendous benediction by Lord Krishna. Right? Some of them were getting this type of liberation, and some of them were getting that type of liberation, and some of them were actually getting full, devotional service in the spiritual world. Everyone was being benedicted on that battlefield. And at the same time, Mother Earth was being relieved of her burden. So it was just 100%, Krishna's just 100% granting, just flowing with mercy and compassion. If you don't understand it that way, then it's your problem. It's not Krishna's problem. Yashoda, do you want to share something? Microphone, please.
That's it. Yeah, so the first line, it's the first line of this paragraph, starting from he was never afraid of Kamsa. But to please his father, he agreed to be so. And I wanted to discuss this point and ask your thought, because in one sense, he's falling down into the river and his father is actually, or he's, showing that he's afraid of Kamsa. So how is his father pleased? His father's actually terrified that he's going to lose his son. Is that because it's the nature of the father to want to protect his child? And so Krishna is reciprocating with that desire of Vasudeva to be a father. And, if he showed his omnipotence as opposed to being a helpless little baby, then Vasudeva wouldn't be able to fulfill his fatherhood.
Thank you. Could you read it again, what you read?
He was never afraid of Kamsa, but to please his father, he agreed to be so.
Yeah. So, I as you're saying, this is my understanding. In other words, to please he's pleasing his father, but Nanda Maharaj, he's pleasing his father Vasudeva, because he's entering deeply into their lives in very dramatic ways that are stirring their emotions for him. So whether it's falling into the water, which in a sense is like a terrifying, ghastly kind of moment that brings out a type of love for Krishna, or whether it's when Krishna is going before him and saying, please forgive me, my father, then that's another, it's a subtext of rasa being experienced in the same fatherly mood. Krishna is going to reciprocate with his fatherly mood in all these different ways. By killing Kamsa, that's a way that he reciprocated with him. By offering words of love in all these different moods. So if he didn't appear to need to escape the wrath of Kamsa, then all this Leela wouldn't play out. So Krishna plays through this Leela. And in doing so, he's always stirring up that bhakti in his devotees. I don't know if others would like to share their thoughts on that. Of course, this month is a month where we can really, Kartik is coming. This is very important. We should talk about this. As Kartik begins this Wednesday, I believe. And so this is a time it's a time for vratas, for taking vows to carry out. These are offerings of ourselves. These are acts of sacrifice that illustrate our devotion and our submission to Krishna. And it's also a time to meditate on Krishna himself and his leelas in Vrindavan. And so that we fall in love with him. Because we most of us probably do not spend enough time contemplating this. So I encourage everyone here to take a suitable vow, and likely if it involves going to Bhagavatam, reading Krishna book, hearing and meditating on the Damodarastakam and the meanings of those verses, becomes a very, very, if we want, like say we have so many years left in life, it's not all that many, it could be much less than we expect. And we need a strategy to get to the point where we actually love Krishna. What's being expressed here by Uddhava, we're meant to aspire for that type of love. What's being expressed, in these verses, what's our strategy for that? It must include studying the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, because that's how Krishna that's the path he gave us for doing it. So to contemplate his leelas and meditate on them and hear Srila Prabhupada's commentaries on them. Very powerful. And when we do it in this month, you get 1,000 times the benefit. So if we have this limited time, let us not let these very valuable opportunities escape us. Okay, I just want to read a bit more here. So let's go back to Uddhava's conversation. He says that when I think about this, it gives me pain in the heart. Then he says, who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet even once, could ever forget it? Right? We see like mothers fall in love with their baby, and every little limb of that baby is soft and sweet, and oh my God, those cheeks, and it's like, it's that, but multiplied many, many more times. Smelling the dust from the feet of Krishna, it's just so great. So he's remembering that. Who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet even once, could ever forget it? Simply by expanding the leaves of his eyebrows, Krishna has given the death blow to those who are burdening the earth. You have personally seen how the king of Chedi, Shishupal, achieved success in yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. Even the actual yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performing their various practice. Who can tolerate separation from him? Again, here's Shishupal. Nothing but evil and dirty and offense. Personification of offense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 98, 99. He's still insulting. Krishna's just waiting. And then after all of that, we've all been insulted before, but have we ever sat there while someone, viciously insults us like 100 times? Just, his devotees are like, Pandavas are like just ready to lash out. And then, I grant you liberation. That's Krishna's mercy, right? It is, though, right? It is. It externally appears differently, but that's what he was doing. That's his nature. Who can tolerate separation from him? Certainly others who were fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows. Mahatma Gandhi may not have understood this. And while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. What more glorious way to die but to look into the eyes of the Lord himself? Lord Sri Krishna is the Lord of all kinds of threes and is independently supreme by achievement of all kinds of fortune. He is worshipped by the external maintainers of the creation, who offer him the paraphernalia of worship by touching their millions of helmets to his feet. All right, so he's that Ananta Shesha, Lord Brahma, all the Manus, all these great beings, they're bowing their head to him. Right? They're bowing. Normally a person would become egotistical. Normally a person would become maybe callous towards others, thinking themselves to be so great. But that's not the nature of Krishna. Krishna remains totally merciful, totally compassionate, totally loving. Therefore, O Vidura, does it not pain us when his servitors, when we remember that he, Lord Krishna, used to stand before King Ugrasena, who was sitting on the royal throne, and used to submit explanations before him, saying, "O my Lord, please let it be known to you." He takes the role of the servant. He relishes taking the role of the servant. And then the verse, right? Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of mother, and not just any mother, Krishna's mother, to the she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. How merciful is Krishna? He doesn't see all her evil. He only sees, she came to me like a mother. He doesn't see all the sins of Ajamil. All he sees is, he chanted my name. Therefore he must be delivered. I must send my my messengers to save him. And these Vishnu Dutas, they understand that mood, right? They have that special position because they've cultivated understanding the mood of Lord Narayan. And the way that we will become capable to be blessed with a similar understanding is by becoming the Duta, by becoming the servant of the Guru, by becoming the servant of the spiritual master, and contemplating their mood of mercy. Really, this is really what our sampradaya is all about. It's about extending the mercy of Krishna. If you go down our entire Guru Parampara, each one is extending the mercy of Krishna to the next, to the next, to the next. And particularly when we get to Sri Chaitanya, who comes as the most merciful incarnation, then he gives the very path of approaching him as approaching others. It's always about following the order of the Guru. Nityananda took that order to extend the mercy from Sri Chaitanya and spread it. Right? Srila Prabhupada took that order from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, spread this to the English-speaking world, spread it to the Western world, contemplated his mood, lost interest in everything else, and became an instrument of that mood, just as the Vishnu Dutas are doing here. And then, of course, Srila Prabhupada gave that to his followers, and we follow his followers. And by trying to make that order, that duty, that message, one's very life and soul, then we become connected. And really no other way else. On the strength of our sadhana merely alone, I don't think many of us stand the chance. It's by invoking the mercy of those that we serve, by saying, I'm willing to sacrifice to please you, and I'm willing to try to operate according to your understanding of things, your mood of things, how you see things. The Yamadutas couldn't, their understanding wasn't as nuanced as that. It wasn't as deep. They felt like we will represent justice, but they didn't understand how nuanced that is. So they were looking at a person that Lord Vishnu says, he's entirely pure. And they were looking at, he's impure. Something's got to be done. It's just a very, very interesting, very, very interesting scene that Srila Vyasadeva is exposing here, framing here for us. And that the Acharyas have also handed down to us and focused our attention on. That through this we can understand the merciful nature of Krishna, and particularly how that merciful nature manifests through his holy name. Right? That this is Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. That this name is, not only is it not material, not only is it completely composed of spiritual energy, but it is Krishna himself. And it's the way that Krishna extends his mercy, particularly in this day and age. So, let us hear the Shastra from devotees who understand it, beginning with Srila Prabhupada. And let us try to counter any hesitation that we have due to misunderstanding the merciful nature of Krishna that's within our mind or within our heart. And let us take shelter of that merciful Krishna in the way that he manifests here, through the Shastra, through service to Guru, and especially through the holy name. It may be difficult for us to chant japa with attention. Let us read about Krishna, understand who he is, understand that this is him in this most merciful manifestation, and try to rededicate ourselves every day. Let us open up our hearts to Krishna and speak to him as a person, and ask and beg for him to reveal something of this understanding to us, so that we can actually take steps forward, rather than just kind of stay in the society of devotees, but without the kind of seriousness and dedication that it takes to actually advance. And again, that this month that we have here is a unique opportunity to do it. It's these holy times, these holy days that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said they grant bhakti, are granted through these days. I've spoken more than I really should have. We still have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to open it up to other Vaishnavas and hear their thoughts. Begin with Jai Jagannath Prabhu.
There seems to be a tension between the pure spirituality that Srimad Bhagavatam is presenting and the sort of material preoccupation with like justice that you probably would have found in like Karma Kanda. And so our society doesn't have the context of a religious culture of Karma Kanda and the sort of seriousness of morality in terms of proper social engagement and so on. We have the disaster that is our contemporary world, and then we come and hear the pure presentation of the Bhagavatam, which doesn't seem at all concerned, frankly speaking, with the sort of good and evil of the material world, because that is all inconsequential in one sense, you know, by chanting the name of Narayana, and you can become free from all this. And that tension, it seems, is very hard for even a lot of devotees today, having existed in the disaster that is our contemporary world, and seeing the transgressions that have happened even in our own communities, to just kind of, we like to hear it like without the context of that, so it's easier to hear. But then if you start thinking of actual examples of transgressions of devotees have made or things that you know that are happening in the material world, it's kind of hard to navigate this sort of tension between
be merciful in that case.
Like justice and mercy, or morality of the world, and then the inconsequence of it when you know, chant the name of Narayana and so on. And it's hard to, especially when you're thinking about it in terms of how do you supposed to live in this way, because I know I can think of examples where devotees have made transgressions, but they chant Hare Krishna. And I'm still not giving them a pass in my mind for, you know, so many things. I don't care if you're chanting Hare. You're probably chanting opera now. You know, like the mind goes into the...
Maybe in any case.
Well, then that gives us a justification to not see the fact that they're chanting. Well, that's just offensive. That's a pretense of devotion.
Okay.
And that way we can, you know, nourish our desire to be critical and not to see that point.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, you're an experienced devotee, and you've seen a lot of changes over the decades.
Inspiring devotee.
And how do you navigate this sort of difficulty, especially sharing a message like this to our, I'm thinking also like our younger devotees who are really absorbed in this whole justice thing now just because of the way the world is today.
Okay. I navigated awkwardly. But where I feel I can see the light is in the behavior of certain Vaishnavas I have great respect for. And I'm very wary to be swayed by those who I think are swayed by their lower natures sometimes, which we're all quite prone to. And I've identified in my mind certain individuals who I see aren't swayed in the same way. And I see that they're not swaying the same, because even though they've been attacked personally, they always respond as a Vaishnava without attacking, even seeing the good in the one that's attacking them. Then I understand, okay, they're like the Vishnu Dutas. They understand the mood of who they're serving, of Krishna, and they embody that merciful, compassionate nature. And so I find that what those people do is they move through the world seeking the nectar, trying to be of service, and not that they don't recognize the transgressions, but they don't particularly dwell on them. What to speak of, I mean, there are people out there that is their life, identifying and calling out the transgressions. They become, I would say, obsessed. And I see that it leads to very dark places again and again. So like if you say your experience after some time, I've seen that again and again. I've seen that mood and they're saying it in a mood of like, I'm justified to say this, completely incapable of seeing their own transgressions, which are sometimes the mountain compared to the molehill, right? I've seen people that have a mountain of transgressions bitterly criticizing someone who maybe has a molehill, or maybe that molehill doesn't even exist, you know? So seeing those Vaishnavas, I become inspired to try to move through this world without being critical of the devotees, to try to move through the world as Krishna says is dear to him, that one causes no, how does he express it exactly? But like, who causes no trouble or anxiety for another living being. Like that idea that I can move through this world without causing anxiety for another living being, to me is like, okay, there's an essential teaching that from that platform, if I could achieve that platform, then the holy name is going to, my offenses will be gone, and the holy name, the potency of the holy name, I'll be fully exposed to, or the potency of hearing the Shastra, and so on. That all these things that somehow by some great mercy I'm in the middle of, they're bouncing off me because I'm so offensive in so many ways. So seeing that in those Vaishnavas makes me try to become inspired to move through this world without causing anxiety or pain, unnecessary criticism that has no positive direction to it. But then, of course, that leaves the question of but there's still the transgressions and things that need to be dealt with. And there's still the tension between justice and mercy. And even that tension between justice and mercy, when it's coming from the right place, even the justice is mercy. And those are never easy questions. Like, that's the kind of question where it's like, that will always require judgment. Like, really, the entire Mahabharata is great souls struggling with the balance between justice and mercy. And so those are difficult questions to answer. Those are the kind of things where, at the very least, we need to approach them dispassionately. Like, at the very least, we need to be able to come from a place like, what is most pleasing to Krishna here? What would please Krishna the most in this? And that's not always obvious, or not always easy to get at. So that's challenging. But even before we get there, we have to cultivate, in my mind, cultivate this mood of caring about every living being, and not being very careful about the justifications that we have, how we justify our own critical behavior, I would guess. I don't know if I fully addressed what you said, but we have a couple more minutes if someone would like to share something. Venkataji?
So, thank you. Just on this, I think, same point or a similar point, I'm really struck by this reflection on what it means to be a duta, or a messenger. Or you were kind of translating it as a servant. But I think there's a distinction where my understanding is it's a servant who is serving as a representative. So there's different kinds of service, but this is particularly as a representative. And so that, for me, brings home this idea that I think you really churned out very nicely, that if we want to be true to our aspirations, at least, of being representatives or being servants of Krishna, then it really means leaning into that role of representative. So we all have to, so everyone is negotiating, whether we're conscious of it or not, everyone is negotiating this kind of justice, mercy, tension. But as representatives of Krishna, we have to also negotiate. We don't get a pass. We still have to negotiate that tension. But our way of negotiating that tension, if I'm understanding correctly, is at the end of the day, the mercy is going to always override, because that's the mood of our master. So we have to, even if it feels unnatural or uncomfortable, we have to lean into that role as representing that our master. At the same time, kind of thinking about some of the points that Jai Jagannath Prabhu has raised, it's so subtle that the way that that's going to show up for each of us, I think, is going to be a little bit different, and is going to be a reflection even of things like age and stage of life.
Sure.
So the way it's going to show up for someone who is being a representative as a monastic, for instance, is going to look very different perhaps than those of us who are in the working world and who are going to have to respond to that tension, still representing that side of mercy above all else, but it's going to maybe be expressed in a different way.
Sure.
And I also just want to honor, which I think sometimes gets lost, that for some people, I hear what you're saying in terms of how it can become very dark and obsessive and a fixation, but also for some people, their dharma in this world is to be an activist. And so I'm trying to appreciate more and more how someone can be an activist as their occupation or in their stage of life, and can try to do that in a way that's true to this idea of that at the end of the day, still I'm going to represent mercy. You know, mercy kind of superseding everything else.
Thank you. Beautiful. So we'll stop here. This Wednesday night, we have a festival that is not only honoring the Rasa Purnima, honoring the beginning of Kartik, and honoring the installation of Sri Gaurachandra. So please, everyone, come. We're not announcing it super widely. It's kind of for our internal group, but it'll be a very special night, and so it'll be wonderful to gather together. So please come. I forget. Oh, it's at 6 o'clock. 6 p.m. it begins. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Gruntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar ki. Shri Shri Gaurachandra ki. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Let us all deeply absorb ourselves in kirtan now, all together, please. Hari Bo. Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.